The Shark Deck.
Hello again, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. According to the Wall Street Journal, some people walked out of Dave Chappelle's concert in Boston. According to Chappelle spokespeople, Dave wasn't even in Boston. I'll get to that part. That part's extra weird. Chappelle was on stage and he was condemning Hamas attack on Israel. A member of the audience told Chappelle to shut up after Dave said he didn't think people should lose their jobs for supporting Palestinians. Dave also accused Israel of killing innocent civilians and committing war crimes, according to the Wall Street Journal's report. I have not yet seen any video or audio of this come to surface. As you may know, if you go to a Chappelle show, you have to put your phone in a yonder pouch. But the Wall Street Journal reports one audience member told Chappelle to shut up. Others cheered and shouted, "Free Palestine." That prompted some audience members to walk out. Those audience members later posted on social media saying Chappelle's words had made them feel unsafe. One audience member wrote, "The audience was cheering Chappelle on during his tirade. I was sick. We were sick. I turned to my friends and wife and said, I think it's time to go. We walked out and met up with many other Jews leaving the show. Never in my life have I felt so unsafe and so fearful of what I was witnessing." Towards the end of the show, Chappelle reportedly said that two wrongs don't make a right. Now, to make this story weird, a spokesperson for Chappelle told the Wall Street Journal that Dave denies being in Boston that night, which is weird because the TD Garden promoted a Dave Chappelle concert and sold tickets to it, and I imagine had Dave Chappelle not showed up at the arena, that would have been a different story. So I don't know why they would deny Dave's there. Perhaps it was a joke that nobody's getting. Meanwhile, remember recently I did a mailbag episode and we were discussing the price of concert tickets, and I noticed that Seinfeld and Gaffigan had not yet sold out in San Francisco. Well, somebody must have hit the panic button because they got Jerry and Jim together to talk to the San Francisco Chronicle. The shows are coming up Thursday and Friday, November 2nd and 3rd. If you want to go, tickets range from $50 to $757. No, that's crazy. Who's opening for who? Jim Gaffigan said, "We're opening for each other." I guess one night you get Jim first, the other night you get Jerry first. Doesn't really help answer the question, Jim. They asked what it's like doing comedy in an arena as opposed to a small club. Jim said, "The technology, the sound, and the video has made an arena show completely different from how I might have ever seen a basketball game 20 years ago. I think it's a pretty cool experience for people." The Chronicle was curious about their first experiences as comedians in San Francisco. Jerry said, "I remember I was working at the comic strip in New York City in '78. Some guy came through looking for comedians for the Punchline in San Francisco and the last stop in Newport Beach. It was the first time we would get on a plane to do a show, which was a really big deal, and I got the Punchline in San Francisco, and I thought, wow, these people really like to laugh. It was a revelation. They were much more into what the comedians were doing. They accepted comedy as a legitimate thing. In New York, it was like a carny show, a sideshow, but in San Francisco, it was like you were considered an actual legitimate performer and a real artist." Jim said, "By the time I came through in the early 90s, San Francisco was one of the great comedy cities. The Punchline was one of the best clubs in the country, and as Jerry said, the audience was exceptional in many ways. When I got to headline there, it felt like a real accomplishment. There were some road rooms where you just couldn't wait to get to Sunday night, but San Francisco was so amazing. The audience inspired creativity, and after the show, you could go out to dinner. In a lot of cities, you did a comedy club in Cleveland in the 90s and tried to go out for a late dinner on a Sunday night. You went to a vending machine." Jerry was curious. "Are we going out to dinner after the last San Francisco show?" Jim said, "Yes." Nate Bargatze will host Saturday Night Live on Saturday. He wrote on Instagram, "Beyond a dream come true. Thank you. It's insane. It's truly insane. I cannot believe it. I can't believe I got asked. It's pretty wild." Someone smarter than me pointed out, and this is not a dig at Nate Bargatze, but Hollywood actors are still on strike, and thus they're not promoting things, so that limits the pool of guest hosts available to Lorne Michaels, which kind of explains Pete Davidson, Nate Bargatze, and Bad Bunny as a combination musical act/host. So not saying Nate's not worthy, I'm super happy for him, but there's possibly another world where, I don't know, Leo DiCaprio is hosting this week promoting the Scorsese movie. Know what I'm saying? Yes. Gary Gulman wore a Rod Carew jersey on stage on Saturday. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune was at a show and said the wardrobe choice may have been a way of pandering to the Minnesota fans at the Fitzgerald Theater, but it also served as a nice setup for his opening routine on growing up in the 70s. He joked about staying up late to catch Three's Company that used to air at 9 p.m., if I recall correctly, sneaking into a theater to watch Jaws, dealing with the horrors of being held back in the first grade, and discovering Jesus was Jewish. Gulman said, "Some of these jokes might just be for 9 people." I like this, too. Gulman teased audience members who weren't familiar with classic novels, suggesting no one should be allowed to read Angels and Demons unless they first pass a test about the grapes of wrath. Gary said, "I'm just pandering to librarians. They buy a lot of books." No more Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. Yeah, the college football game in L.A. was sponsored by Jimmy Kimmel the last 2 years. He's bailed on it. Rob Gronkowski will take over the bowl. It is now called the LA Bowl, hosted by Gronk. The winner of the Mountain West Conference will play the Pac-12's number 5. Can't wait. Happy birthday, Snoop Doggy Dogg. He turned 52. And on Saturday, Snoop shared the stage with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. They were at the Best Night of Your Life 2, a benefit show. Reilly told the crowd at LA's Greek Theater, "Yesterday was a very special day. It was Mr. Snoop Dogg's birthday. We're about to sing happy birthday to the greatest rapper in the world." Will Ferrell wheeled out a big 3-tier cake. Snoop took out a joint to light the candles. John C. Reilly said, "That's what I'm talking about." And then everybody sang happy birthday. Stephen Colbert has famous people in his phone under code names. I do that too. Name dropper humble brag. Stephen Van Zandt is in my phone under code, but Jimmy Fallon is in my phone as Jimmy Fallon. I don't know why I didn't rename that one. You get this paranoia that you're going to lose your phone and someone's going to steal all your celebrity contacts. And I guess Colbert shares that fear. He told John Mulaney, "In my phone, some of my famous friends I have under fake names, like Conan is Pale Male, Jon Stewart is Doofus, and you, John Mulaney, are the Common Man," who's a character from the play A Man for All Seasons. Mulaney said, "So when I call you, it says the Common Man is calling?" Mulaney thought that was really funny. Recently, Mulaney spoke to Pitchfork, and they discussed what music Mulaney liked at various ages. Today, let's look at age 15, when John Mulaney was into Phish's Reba. Mulaney said, "I was trying to figure out how to be interesting. I had friends, had a decent time socially. I went to a fair amount of parties. We were into drugs, but no one was out of control at the time. I was all over the place musically. At 15, my dad walked into my room while I was blasting his Ike and Tina Turner album with Proud Mary on it, and he was just laughing. When OK Computer came out, I read about it in NME, and they said it might be the best British album of all time. I really hesitated telling Pitchfork this, but we were going to Phish concerts doing that whole thing too. I got into them because of Colleen O'Brien, my best friend John O'Brien's older sister. She was a senior when we were freshmen. She had a poster for Phish's A Live One in her bedroom and was playing that song Reba. And I was like, oh, are these guys trying to be funny? By that point, I was the biggest Talking Heads fan. And the biggest thing that drew me to David Byrne was that I thought he was really funny. The thing that turns some people off about Phish is their lyrics and the scene. But I was like, oh, these guys are dorks. They're like the Simpsons. They're of their time. They have a lot of influences, and they're phenomenal musicians. Dwayne Johnson is not happy with the wax figure of him at the Musée Grévin. How's my French doing today, huh? I nailed that. You don't even tell me I nailed that. That museum, the Grévin Museum, is in Paris. Fans have apparently reacted in horror. Writes Variety, at the museum's light-skinned wax figure of Johnson, complete with a suburban dad kind of outfit that Johnson is almost never seen in. The wax figure drew instant comparisons to Mr. Clean. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson reshared to his Instagram a video from comedian James Andre Jefferson, who said, "You know The Rock? That's how Paris thinks he looks. They turned The Rock into a pebble. It looks like The Rock has never seen the sun a day in his life. You make The Rock look like David Beckham. It looks like The Rock's going to be part of the royal family. Did y'all even Google him?" The Rock said, "For the record, I'm going to have my team reach out to our friends at Grévin Museum in Paris, France, so we can work on updating my wax figure here with some important details and improvements, starting with my skin color. And the next time I'm in Paris, I'll stop in and have a drink with myself." So if you listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, they have tweaked something. So in the past, if you missed a day, like today's Tuesday, say you just didn't listen yesterday, you'd open up your app and it would go, hey, here's Tuesday's episode and here's also Monday's episode. They've stopped doing that. So it's possible that you're not hearing every episode. There's at least 7 of these every week, unless, there's breaking comedy news. But there should be at least 7. So if you don't listen to 7 a week, do me a favor and just go into your app and go, oh, I missed that one, because the download numbers are taking a hit. Johnny Mac is not at all happy with Apple's change. From Variety, Marc Maron on why he won't stop talking about anti-Semitism. Variety resurfaced this recently. This was originally from back in April. Maron himself wrote, as a Jew, you're taught early on that you're different and people will hate you for it, maybe kill you. They've done it since the beginning of Jews. We watched Holocaust documentaries at Hebrew school to make sure we understood. It didn't seem like something I really had to worry about here as an American Jew. I've been working professionally as a comic since 1988. When I was a kid, most of my favorite comics were Jews. Old Jews. Don Rickles, Buddy Hackett, Rodney Dangerfield, Woody Allen, Richard Lewis, Lenny Bruce. Comedy was basically Jewish in my mind for years. When I started doing comedy, I didn't embrace my Jewishness. I didn't want to honor the stereotype. I just believed that being a Jewish comic had to be more than a shtick or a neurosis or a way of talking and acting. I didn't want to play into what was familiar to Jews and what people who weren't Jews grew to understand through Jewish comedy. I still enjoyed it, but I didn't want to be it. Skipping ahead, Maron wrote, Jews are being attacked for being Jews. Jews are being killed for being Jews. Here in America, now. It's random and usually attributed to a radicalized, mentally ill person, but the information that drives that radicalization is organized and focused and readily available and promote. Antisemitism is becoming normalized. Skipping ahead, after a show in Salt Lake City recently, during which I had done my most recent riffs on antisemitism, I left the club alone. Outside, some of the audience members were lingering around. There were these two young guys who looked a bit lit up, wiry, game for trouble. They were with two young women. They didn't seem like my fans. Maybe they just came for a, quote, comedy show, a date night. They were looking at me, almost manic. One said, hey, what are you up to now? And I said, going back to the hotel, I guess. The other said, you want to go do some hate crimes? It was odd, but I played along. Yeah, you have some spray paint? Let's go find a synagogue. And the first guy said, no, really, what are you doing now? It felt menacing. I thought, wait, am I the hate crime they want to do? I may have been projecting. I may have been being paranoid. The fact is, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's something Jews live with now. I guess they always have. I won't stop talking about anti-Semitism. That's Marc Maron. You'll find that in Variety. If you're in Cleveland and you need something to do November 8th through the 11th, why don't you hit the 16th Annual Cleveland Comedy Festival? More than 50 comedians from across the U.S. and Canada will be there. The festival director, Kyle Hounhurst, said many of them were born, raised, or have gotten their start in Cleveland and are returning to celebrate our past, present, and future. The 16th Annual Cleveland Comedy Festival in November. Vulture has been doing their list of the 25 comedians you should know. One of them is Sophie Buttle. I have been enjoying her comedy a lot lately. They asked Sophie, what unscripted or reality show would you be good at? Her answer, I felt strongly for years that I would excel on Survivor. Please send this link to the Survivor casting people, because I'm ready. I have many schemes prepared. One thing that I feel has been a gross oversight and strategy in past sessions is the use of pre-seasoning swallowing. I would swallow so many seeds, an amount of seeds you could not fathom, and then, when dropped on the island, I would poop in a hole, cover the poop with dirt, water, and tend to it, and then would have delicious produce that would sustain me throughout the season. Jeff Probst, please contact me. I'm easy to find. I, Johnny Mac, want to go on Amazing Race, but I want to do it the lazy way. If you watch Amazing Race, only the last stage matters because you kill yourself in part one and, everybody races to the museum and then they're like, oh, the museum doesn't open at 10 a.m. Or you're on the third flight and everybody catches up anyway because of airport delays or a cab caper. So what I would do is, let's say we land in, Prague, and the Amazing Race host, what's that guy's name? Phil. And Phil would be like, hey, you guys got to get to the museum. I would just sightsee and go have a beer and have a nice casualty lunch, take the 4-hour penalty, and then show up and be like, yeah, I know, but this isn't an elimination stage, Phil, so I don't care that I'm last, and then turn it on in the second half. But I would do a lot more sightseeing than most people. Sophie Buttle, what's your proudest achievement of your comedy career so far? She said, I think the highlight was getting passed at the Comedy Cellar in New York. Every comic I've looked up to has been a cellar comic. It feels like the center of stand-up comedy in the world. I'm still scared every time I step in the club, which is a great feeling. Love to feel alive. Worst show ever? I did a show in northern British Columbia once. It was at a hockey sports bar, and they agreed to turn off the TV screens during the show, but they didn't turn off the buzzer thing that went off automatically when a goal was scored. So several times during my set, a scary light show and sirens would go off, and everybody would check out their phone to see who scored. That's a good laugh. Let's get out on that. All right, a couple notes from today's show. Note number one, where I did hey, what's the name of the guy that hosts The Amazing Race? That is an old radio DJ trick to get your audience involved, especially in talk radio. You could do things like, oh, what was the name of the guy? He ran against Ronald Reagan in 84. What was that guy's name? So right now, one of you is shouting that at your phone. I know the answer is Walter Mondale. But you would do that just to engage the listeners, and they would call in, and then somebody would help you out. It's a good way if you have dead phones to get things going. Other note is I can't speak today. The amount of edits in today's show. So the raw edit right now, without commercials, I'm at the 2240 mark. So you can look at on your phone. So subtract, say, 2 minutes for the commercials, and then you'll see how many edits I made today. I just cannot get through a sentence without stumbling. But anyway. That's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on that pesky Apple podcast and I'm not giving you every episode, shake your fists of rage at them and download all of them, will ya? Thank you. I appreciate it. Come on, Apple, you're killing me. There's also Spotify if you're on an Android app. Overcast is very nice. We're on YouTube. Wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.